kutoka milimani, Bungani hadi pwani. ELOG inasimama kwa sauti huru,
kwa uadilifu na haki, sisi tuko imara.
Karibuni sana to the Darubini Ya Uchaguzi, the podcast from Election Observation Group, where we talk about elections, democracy, and governance in Kenya. I am your host, Karen Wambui right there. And in today's episode, which is called The Iebc is Back, but is Kenya's electoral reform still on track? So, in this episode, we will be talking about the long-awaited Iebc, which is now finally in seat. We know that the new commissioners are in, but many people are asking, what does this mean for the 2027 general election? Are we ready, or what still needs to be done? Joining me today is someone who works at the heart of these issues, and his name is Felix Odhiambo, the Executive Director at ELGIA. So, karibu sana Felix, and tell us what ELGIA does.
Thank you very much. ELGIA is a regional organization working to support and strengthen democratic governance, electoral processes, electoral commission, and as you rightfully noted, Iebc is one of our key partners in this regard, but we also work with other sister and regional electoral commissions around. We work with the Judiciary to support electoral dispute resolution. Kenyan Judiciary and the Judicial Committee on Elections is again one of our very, very primary partners. We support the judiciaries of Zambia, judiciaries of Malawi, South Sudan, etc. on electoral dispute resolution as well. As a regional organization, we also work very closely with Pan-African organizations like the African Union, the East African Community, the African Court, among other regional and sub-regional organizations. We have a network of regional electoral commissions, as well as regional judiciaries that we work with and support very closely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So as we go into this discussion, I'd want to know, we know that we currently have new Iebcs in seats.
Yeah.
And we want to know what this means now for our general election.
Well, yeah, Iebc was finally reconstituted, and this is barely a month ago. I think it has to be pointed out that when the previous commission left office, the country wasted close to 2 years, or 2.5 years, actually close to 3 years, without fully reconstituting the electoral commission. You will recall that following the 2007 disputed elections and 2008 post-election violence, a comprehensive commission was established to do an inquiry on what happened in 2007. And one of the recommendation of that commission of inquiry that was led by Justice Kriegler, is popularly known as the Kriegler Report, recommended that an electoral commission has to be in place 2 years to the next general elections. The Iebc was constituted 2 years, 2 months to the next general elections. And whereas we are within that window, I think it has to be pointed out that time has been lost. But with that as it may, the new commission is in place and induction has been done. And the responsibility to ensure that 2027 general elections is credible rests first and foremost on Iebc and the new commissioners and the secretariat, but also is a responsibility that is shared by every stakeholder and every citizen in the country to ensure that the process is restored back on track, and that we move with speed to ensure that preparatory activities that are required to guarantee 2027 are put in place.
Thank you. I like the fact that when you're talking, you say that the Iebc is barely 1 month old as they have been reconstituted. Do you think that the due process that was done or followed, if we may, will affect how Kenyans trust the new Iebc?
First, I think the starting point is to appreciate the fact that right now, if you look at the history of the Iebcs or electoral commissions in Kenya, it inspires very little confidence. ELGIA conducted or commissioned an opinion survey in April of this year. And in as much as at the time the commission was not in place, the approval rating of every major governance institution was at the lowest, including the Electoral Commission. There were issues that surrounded the appointment of this commission, including court cases, allegations that were made, and in as much as the court dealt with it, these issues may potentially contribute to lowering the trust of the commission. It is therefore the responsibility of this commission to ensure that they work very tirelessly to restore public confidence and to deal with that trust deficit that characterizes electoral commissions in Kenya. They will have to work extra hard to regain public confidence, but also to assure the nation that they are up to the task and that for come 2027, they will ensure that the credibility of the elections is restored.
Thank you for the positive spin. I like the fact that even as we critique the fact that maybe probably there were some discrepancies in how they followed the due process, we currently have a new Iebc, and that should be something that we're looking at as our focus. So we know that the election takes quite a long time to plan, and there has already been a delay in appointing the commissions. Is there anything of importance that we are late probably for in the election space?
The first, of course, is the pending by-elections. Remember, a long absence of Iebc commissioners meant that as it stands now, 23 by-elections are pending. These came as a result of vacancies that occurred since 2023, all the way up to now. They stand at 23 pending by-elections. Now we are late in that. Number two is the boundaries delimitation process. The second boundaries review process was meant to be undertaken and concluded by March of 2024. The constitutional timeline came and lapsed without a comprehensive boundaries delimitation exercise being undertaken. There is also the question of electoral reforms, including ensuring that the reforms are enacted, but also to take into consideration recommendations that were made by observer reports, Iebc on post-election evaluation. ELGIA conducted a post-election audit of 2022 and made key and concrete recommendations that should be put in place to strengthen the electoral reforms. Now, there's the Elections Amendment Act that will reform the Elections Act. There's the Iebc Amendment Act. There is also the Political Parties Amendment Act. There's the Election Offences Amendment Act. Now, in addition to this, we have regulations that would have to be enacted to operationalize these laws. Now, this will have to be done so as to ensure that there is both the legal as well as regulatory mechanisms or reforms to improve this. Now, we are late in that as well. And so, but this is in addition to the preparatory work that is required in the elections operations. Development of the elections operations plan, for example, there is a strategic plan that has been finalized. The commission is yet to adopt it, including massive procurement of election materials all the way to the election. So time is running out, but I think what needs to be done is serious efforts to ensure that these pending issues are addressed.
Okay. So I heard you talk about a couple of things, and of all the priority areas that you have stated, I'd want to know, just to name quite a few, you've talked about the pending by-elections, the electoral reform laws, and you've also talked about the fact that in the pending laws, there are some laws that need to be adopted and the strategic plan, which has been left out. Of those that you have stated, which do you currently think should be a priority? Because as we know, there's been a delay in time on the boundary delimitation and review. Which do you think should be a priority right now?
Number one is pending by elections. That should be the first thing. Number two is massive and comprehensive voter registration, including cleaning the voter register. Remember, the voter registration process was suspended in 2024, and to date, we haven't resumed that. Now, given the agitations by the Gen Zs and their determination to be counted in 2027, restarting the voter registration exercise is a priority. Then the third in that order would be questions of electoral reforms, finalization of these electoral reforms. Once all these three are done, then the country can then switch to preparatory activities that are required in election operations. This is where a whole host of everything that needs to be done then would come into place.
Okay, so first of all, I'd want you to explain what electoral laws is to someone who doesn't really know. And then when you talk about electoral laws that have been recommended, are we talking about the NADCO bills, or are we also talking about some that are reviewed and given as recommendations?
There have been two processes.
Okay.
The first process was spearheaded by Iebc, as well as the Parliamentary Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, supported by ELGIA. Now, this effort looked at the election sector laws and made recommendations on reforming the election sector laws. The second issue that needs to be appreciated here is that despite the fact that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 required that we put in place all the election laws within 1 year of promulgation, that year fell in 2011. The country missed this target. The country missed this target by not passing certain legislations that were expected to operationalize the Elections Act. We don't have a two-third gender bill. We don't have a referendum law in Kenya. And then the election campaign financing law is yet to be fully operationalized. So this is what we looked at. And as a result of this process, we actually drafted certain reforms bills, that some of which are with Parliament. The second process on reforming the electoral process was the NADCO process. The NADCO process, as a result, at the conclusion of that process, and ELGIA was the only organization that supported NADCO, and the Kenyan Parliament, the NADCO came up with 10 bills. Out of the 10, 5 touch on election laws or electoral reforms. So a harmonization process needs to be done with a view to prioritizing on what really is what we need to do between now and 2027.
Okay, thank you very much. I like the fact that you named the Parliament as someone who's also working in combination with the Iebc. We know that the Iebc is not the only body that is working to also strengthen the electoral cycle field. So their function is not only elections. So what other institutions should be involved in making elections better?
Well, civil society organizations play a key role. And as I'm sure you know, we have an umbrella civil society platform called Uchaguzi Initiative that is co-hosted by ELOG and ELGIA. And this has been a credible, critical voice in electoral reforms discourse. The Uchaguzi platform, for example, itself came up with a proposal for reforms contained in a matrix that we have launched at a national multi-stakeholders conference. And this has been shared with the Iebc as well as shared with Parliament. So that is one initiative. The judiciary, given their role in electoral dispute resolution, is also a critical voice in the reform sector. Working with the Judiciary Committee on Elections, JCE, we have a catalogue of reforms that are required to strengthen electoral dispute resolution. And the host political parties, of course, these are the greatest players in the process. They also have a say in that process. And of course, government, the AGs, the Kenya Law Reforms Commission, among others. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how can we also hold these groups or institutions, such as the Parliament Judiciary, accountable when they are not doing some of the mandates that they are to also make the election or electoral space more better?
I think public advocacy. The whole essence of Uchaguzi platform is also advocacy on pertinent electoral issues. And this we have done effectively through press conferences and press statements. And in certain instances, issuing analyses and opinions and things like that. The media would play is a good accountability organization. And so the media can also play a part in that as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we know that ELGIA is working in this electoral space.
Yeah.
And we want to know perhaps how is your organization helping with elections and reforms more?
As I've said, we are intimately involved in the process. We support the Electoral Commission, Iebc, on elections management and administration. We are also one of the main players on the electoral reforms program. Program that brings together ELGIA, Iebc, as well as the Kenyan Parliamentary Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs. And also by virtue of being members of the Uchaguzi platform, we are also part of that CSO's advocacy platform on the enactment of electoral reforms in Kenya. Yeah.
So we do have the phrase that good elections lead to good leadership, and good leadership improves our lives. How true is that when in your encounter working in this space?
Well, that's true. I mean, a country is as good as its leaders. Or a country, as Honorable Martha Karua put it at some point, is as good as the political parties that make it. Part of the governance challenges that not just Kenya but Africa has had is on leadership. And on this, I think everybody stands indicted. The voters for making wrong choices, and as somebody else said, choices have consequences. And the bad leaders and political parties failing to nominate leaders with integrity and things like that. But also there is a whole issue of the linkage between massive corruption and elections. When you see people looking for money and amassing money and then end up in elective or politics, you cannot expect that these people are going to do any good. Part of the reason why I support today the Gen Z's process, it is probably the greatest equalizer that will strengthen the electoral process in this country, where money will play very little role in the elections of leaders. So yeah, that certainly is true.
I like the fact that you talked about voting, why it's important.
Yeah.
So what's one word you'd have to say to someone who probably thinks elections don't affect me? How do you explain the link to elections in everyday life?
It has greatest significance and greatest linkage. If you stay out and not be counted, then you should also not complain about the bad governance or bad leadership. But we have to make sure that elections and the voices of the people count. If we continue to do it in such a way that the voices don't count, then unfortunately it will lead to electoral apathy and the people just keep off.
Okay, so what's your closing parting shot for Kenyans who probably care about fair elections and reforms?
Let me emphasize this. 2027 general elections is probably the most consequential election in our history. It will be the fourth multi-party elections since 2010. And it is an election that is expected to consolidate and deepen our democracy, the rule of law, constitutionalism, among others. The point is that if we miss the chance to deepen and consolidate in 2027, the democratic reversal in this country might be so big and profound that it will take us many, many years from recovering. So this is a message that everybody, all the stakeholders in this country should remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Felix, for being with us today and for your great insights. And I think one of the key messages that I have taken is as much as we need to be vigilant on electoral law reforms, we also need to be able to understand that our advocacy plays a great role in this field. So to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And remember, democracy is not just for politicians, it is for all of us, and it affects our day-to-day life. So follow us at ELOG Kenya and at ELGIA.org for more updates, and use the hashtag Darubini Ya Uchaguzi to keep the conversation.
Kutoka milimani, Bungani hadi pwani, ELOG inasimama kwa sauti huru.
Kwa uadilifu na haki, sisi tuko imara.